Hi, I'm Robert Glazer from Wright Chartered Accountants, and I'd like to welcome Lucy Cooney from Promote to Perform, who's our social media expert. Hi, Lucy. First of all, do you think you can explain to us what you mean by social media?
Yeah, social media it's a pretty sort of general term for really online platforms that allow people to communicate. So it's anything from the widely known Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc.
Yeah.
It's just a way for people to be able to share information and communicate with each other.
Okay, that sounds good. And how do you use it typically for your clients?
It varies depending on who the client is. Obviously there's different platforms suit different businesses.
Right.
But really what we try and do is to make it easier for people to understand how the tools work, because really they are just online tools. So how they work, the differences between them, different audiences around them, and then actually being able to get out there and communicate with their existing customers, their prospective customers, and other people that they want to be talking to and engaging with.
Okay. And I guess all this costs. And how do you measure the return on investment? You know, if our clients want to invest in a social media strategy,
yeah,
what can they expect in terms of a return?
It really depends on what they want to get out of it. So these things, you know, there's a lot of discussion around whether or not you can measure the investment on this.
Yeah.
But it's really down to what you're using it for. So for a company that really just wants to build awareness and to know that people out there know about their brand, have heard about their brand, then obviously there's things like keyword tracking and being able to know how many times your brand is mentioned.
Right.
And there's tools all over the place to be able to do that, free tools to be able to do that. Okay. Obviously for other businesses, online businesses, maybe shops and stores online, it's actually much easier to be able to measure that investment because you can see how many people have bought.
Sure.
But I think that the big thing is, one, knowing what you want to measure and what you want to get out of it, but also knowing what that investment is. And actually with social media, predominantly it's time. So it's actually knowing how much time you're spending on these tools to be able to see whether it's getting the right return.
And so companies that have got a social media strategy, how can they maximise it? How can they gain more exposure using social media tools?
I think one of the things around this is it's social media. It's all about networking, communicating, and sharing information and adding value to people that on a day-to-day basis you just can't get in front of necessarily. Yeah. So it's about finding the right audiences, the right groups, and maybe even the right influences in your industry to try and get that message out, get people talking about you, and ultimately these tools are there about sharing. So if you put out really good quality, valuable information, people should want to share that out to a wider audience, which ultimately helps you with that exposure.
So it's about content as much.
Absolutely.
Okay. And can companies fake their social media presence?
I think there are lots of different. I don't want to use the word scams necessarily, but there are a lot of different things out there about being able to purchase Facebook likes and spam on Twitter, etc. Yeah. And it's not going to do you any good. You can, of course, a company can go out there and say, look, I've got 20,000 Facebook likes. Look how popular we are. If you've bought them and they're not real, really it's only yourself that you're hurting.
So it doesn't do any good.
Of course it doesn't do any good. Outwardly, obviously, it gives an impression about your company, but ultimately there's potentially 20,000 people there that aren't interested in you anyway. Sure. So it's not going to do any good in the long run.
Okay. And for a company starting up, what would you advise them to start using?
It really depends on what they do. There's obviously, I think the first thing to find out is actually who are you wanting to communicate with and where do they hang out.
Right.
So for certain companies and brands, Facebook is a great place to be able to get in touch with people.
Is that just for teenagers?
It's not just for teenagers. It is definitely not just for teenagers. I can safely say I spent a lot of time on there and I'm no longer a teenager. But no, it is becoming a much better. I think they've just surpassed the 1 billion users on there, which is just insane for a number of users on there. So it's not just teenagers on there. It is a lot of people sharing a lot of information and wanting to stay in touch with both friends, colleagues, and companies that they want to be attached to. So,
I mean, earlier on you mentioned one of the greatest investments is time.
Yeah.
What happens, or what advice can you give for companies that just say, well, we just don't have time to get involved in social media?
Other than call us, I think one of the big things is just start small. It's not something that you have to throw everything into, and it's certainly not a form of marketing that stands on its own.
Yeah.
It's really about just trying to integrate into other forms of marketing that you're doing. If you're doing email marketing,
Yeah.
then just having sharing options at the bottom of these things or on blog posts, so that even if you're not on Twitter, allowing others to share your content on Twitter will make a huge difference. So you don't have to fully throw yourself into it to begin with to actually be able to have a presence there. But I think the big thing is just test it out, see where your customers are, and just focus on that before.
I guess there needs to be some expectation of amount of time you have to put aside for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in all honesty, you can run a really good, strong social media campaign in 10-15 minutes a day. So it's not a huge amount of investment. Now, obviously, that time can actually be taken away from other things that you're spending time on that you don't need to.
Sure. And if people want to go and read something about it, are there any resources around that they can...
I think that the internet is inundated with resources about these things. I mean, for somebody who just wants to find out the basics around these things, there's a site called Mashable, which is a brilliant resource. Mashable, okay. Which is a great resource for anything to do with technology, online networking, social media sites.
Right.
And it does just give some really good basics. Actually going onto a lot of these sites themselves, Facebook's got a great help centre that tells you all about their pages for business.
In English?
Similarly, yes. It is very very user friendly. And then other blogs, just searching for social media for your industry and actually going out there and actually finding out specifically. So if you're a restaurant, just go and Google social media for restaurants, and there's so much resource out there to help somebody.
Okay, and I guess you think social media is here to stay, it's not just a fad?
I think it's safe to say it's definitely here to stay. In what form? Nobody knows. These things are changing constantly. Tools like LinkedIn in the last 3-4 years, it's completely evolved from what it was back then. So who knows what it looks like, but I think it's definitely here to stay.
Okay, and do you have any tips that we can put out there?
I think be open-minded is one of them. Really try and be open about where your customers are, and rather than just presuming that tools like Facebook are just there for teenagers or kids, actually get out there and do a little bit of research. Ask your customers, do you use these tools? If they're all coming back saying yes, it's telling you that you should be there talking to them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Lucy.
Thank you.